I'm Alan Evry, and this is Art Strokes. Today we're going to visit with William Woodward, who is a well-known Washington artist. Welcome to our program, Bill.
Thank you, Alan. It's nice to be here.
Now, I know that you're one of the true Washington natives. You went to high school here in Washington, D.C., didn't you?
Yes, I did, and my father was born in Washington, and my grandfather came here when he was a small boy.
So you're third generation. Apropos of that, you also teach at George Washington University.
Yes, I started the painting department for them in 1969.
I see.
Before that, the university was affiliated with the Corcoran, and we still have Corcoran students come and take our courses.
Yes, and I might say that probably George Washington has one of the better art departments in the area, if not in the country.
Well, it's there are several good schools around, and I hope you're counted as one of them.
Yes, that's good. And you also attended school locally, didn't you, at university level?
Yes, I graduated from American University, and subsequently received a fellowship to study in Florence, and I went to Italy spent 2 years there. As a matter of fact, two of the happiest years of my life, I might say, back in from 1957 to 1959. And when I came back, I went back to school and took my master's at American University.
And I know that one of the courses that you teach is a materials course, which I think is very basic to anything that one wants to do with painting.
Yes, well, as a matter of fact, that's one reason GW hired me, because I was the only person in the area teaching that course at the time. It's called Workshop in Materials and Methods. Mm-hmm. And what it is a course that recapitulates the history of art, but from the technical viewpoint.
Right.
Starting with the earliest techniques up through modern times, and as some of my students like to call it, a class in forgery, because it's one of those courses where creativity doesn't count. The emphasis is really on craftsmanship and duplicating the exact technique used by painters, well-known artists of the past, such as El Greco or Goya or Rembrandt.
We had an opportunity to visit you in your studio in Virginia. I noticed there was steps there. What is the purpose of those steps?
Well, that's actually a very clumsy scaffold that I had constructed while I was working on a very, very large drawing for a mural project. And it's on rollers, and it allows me to go up in small increments because on most scaffolding, the steps are so big, and you need to just go up gradually.
Now, you have a wonderful workspace there. It used to be a firehouse, didn't it?
It was the old firehouse, that's right, and unfortunately the pole is not still there. That would have been an amusing thing to have, but it's a huge space. There's a kitchen, and the firemen slept up there. On the downstairs there was the engine room.
But fortunately, the large space available to you there allows you to do very large paintings, too.
This would be very hard to find in New York, this kind of space. It's in the town of Warrenton, Virginia, where I live now.
And you used to have I know you used to have your studio in downtown D.C.
I had it there for years, but a friend of mine gave my wife a very large dog, and it was impractical to live in the city. So we looked within a 50-mile radius of Washington and found a place out there.
Yeah, there's some of the paintings on the wall in your studio, different subjects that you've worked with.
Yeah, well, I love to travel. I think it's a good thing for artists, well, everyone else, too. Artists don't have an exclusivity on travel privileges.
Right.
But it's very stimulating, and some of those pictures were done in places as far away as Bora Bora.
What is this little character here?
Those are some wood carvings I picked up in Belli on a wonderful trip there. They were in pieces, literally in the jungle. I felt like somebody out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, discovering these pieces and putting them together.
And this is a canal scene you're doing in Georgetown, isn't it?
Yes, that's a local scene. I don't do much locally with local subjects. Part of the problem is, I think, that I grew up here, was born here, and it's hard to see it with fresh eyes. Every time I go away and come back to Washington, I find it all paintable. But by then I have to start teaching again, so and the winter sets in. This is one of the few pictures I've done in the Washington area. I've done some things up at Great Falls, part of a rock series I did.
What size is that painting?
This picture's only about 40 by 50. I say only because later on in the program we'll see some larger stuff.
Much larger. But you also work smaller than that,
well,
too.
Yeah, it's lovely to work manageable size.
I know that we'll have an opportunity also when we look at some of the work that's was in the Fendrick Gallery that's much smaller than these.
Yeah, those pictures were done last summer in Brittany, where I have a studio on the coast that I've been renting for the past 20 years or so.
But you don't work exclusively with oils, do you?
Well, I work pretty much in all painting media, including watercolor. But my preference is oils. Acrylics dry too fast for me. I need time to develop the ideas, to work out the ideas. That palette is has been in my studio for quite a while.
Yeah, you probably got a couple $1,000 worth of dried paint on your palettes.
Well, you just clean the mixing area, you see.
But you probably arrange your colors in a sequence.
Well, the palette is important for the contemporary for the contemporary painter as the guitar is for a musician. If you wouldn't sit down to play the guitar and not have the strings in the notes in the same order. Right. Just like touch typing, the colors are always in the same sequence, and the palette should be charged up or tuned, as it were, before you start painting. So you can waste a lot of time hunting around for the right pigment.
So you automatically go to what
I just know where it is. I don't have to look at the palette.
Right. You had two palettes there. Are they both oil painting palettes?
Yes, we'll have some for acrylics, some for oils, some just to mix random colors on.
What is this painting here in the studio?
This is a picture that I painted a few years ago. It's from a collection of work I did inspired named after the beautiful names of the winds that blow around the Mediterranean and in the Atlantic. The title of this picture is Mistral. Has no relationship to Mistral's Daughter, that terrible film made about an artist. With all the sensitivity, you got all the sensitivity of a truck driver, I think.
Okay, we'll get into film comments here. We have the more difficult time of dealing with paintings, which are much more complex, I think, than most of the films that we see. But on the other hand, I wonder if you feel that the experience you have in France makes you a better painter, or is it just simply a matter of subject matter?
Well, it's a matter of expediency. I already have a studio set up there. It's cool in the summertime, and it's as everyone who lives around here knows, it's unbearably hot in the summer, and that's when my best time is. I have the uninterrupted summers off because of my teaching position at George Washington University, and I like to go somewhere where it's cool enough to work outside, and you feel, it's brisk and invigorating.
So you have access to a really wonderful place there in Brittany, don't you?
Yes, for the past 20 years I've been renting half of a beautiful castle that's been in the same family for 1,000 years. And the owner is an architect who specializes in historic restoration, and he is very sympathetic to the arts. Right. As a matter of fact, I've run painting seminars in Brittany in that castle. For students, for American students.
Right. So from time to time, you do take students over there to help them in their learning process.
Yes. Well, it's been a great experience for them. Because they work every day, free from the distractions of life that they have here. I get them up at 6 in the morning, and they'll do 2 paintings every day. Right.
What is this painting here that we have on tape?
That's part of a series of pictures that was called Dangerous Places. The coast of Brittany is very rocky. This is probably the most conservative one in its composition. It took me a while to get up the courage to paint the rocks in the sea because it's such a terrible cliche. And it was the same way with Venice. It took me years to have the nerve to paint Venice because it's done so much. This is a little harbor in Brittany early in the morning before the tourists come out. And that's the beach near the chateau in Brittany. These paintings that we're looking at are all they're called alla prima paintings. What that means is that the pictures are painted very spontaneously with no preliminary drawing whatsoever, nor is there any retouching. You do the coloring and the drawing all simultaneously. The composition is all worked out. And if you blow it, you just throw it away.
One sitting, so to speak.
Yeah, they're all done in about 3.5 hours. Little ones like this were done in maybe an hour and a half.
So
it's amusing to paint the whole city on this tiny format. That picture is only about 8 by 11 inches. It's the town of Douarnenez on the French coast. It used to be a wonderful little fishing village. But the wonderful thing about Brittany, one of the things I enjoy so much there is the combination of nature and the human presence. In traveling around the United States, the scenery is very beautiful, but there are no people in it.
Right.
You don't see figures milling about wandering about the landscape the way you see in Europe, which is so populated.
Yeah, there are a lot of paintings that I know that people do, and they're wonderful landscapes and cityscapes, but there are no people.
Well, even if I don't paint the people, as this painting on the easel, I like to imply the presence of man somehow.
By the objects that are there.
And I think it's a very valid subject for today, man and his environment. That was an amusing picture to paint because the people were, the bathers were running around the beach, and they were not drawn. They were just constructed with the brush. Some of the figures are were unfinished really, but it didn't matter.
Just a suggestion was enough.
Just a suggestion was enough, to try and capture the attitude of the gesture. And I'm trying to do the same thing in landscape. It really isn't so much as what the place looks like. It's more what the things are doing.
Right. And you do very interesting skies when you do your landscapes.
Well, Brittany lends itself to that so much because it's a peninsula, and the sea brings these wonderful cloud formations in, and the clouds move over the landscape, and sometimes you have these wonderful foggy or misty, hazy days. Other times the clouds hover over the landscape, and the light comes down between them and projects like a wonderful projector. And you see these light patterns moving through the landscape. It's almost Rembrandt lighting or Dutch lighting in the tradition of 17th century painting. But again, this is another alla prima painting. And they're these pictures are very breezy and light, and I was trying for sort of a careless elegance, if you will.
This is a very interesting painting here, too. People fishing.
Yeah, that one I didn't have in my last exhibition. I really haven't finished it. I think the city, the town across the harbor is too strong and fights the figures. That needs to be subdued. But sometimes I work, the picture's done in 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
But then maybe you need to let it finish itself for a few months, which often they do. This is a Venetian picture. I had a studio there one year for a few months, and I've been trying to go back almost every year. This is called After the Regatta. There's a wonderful regatta at the end of the season, and those were the...
Now, this is a very interesting painting because of the rock formations.
Yeah, well, that's part of that Dangerous Places series of these wonderful rocky rock formations on the coast of Brittany.
When you paint rocks, surfaces of rocks, do you like to invent color, or do you like to stick more close to nature?
I think it's more of a challenge to try and discover how to create the color that's really there.
More natural.
Because it only takes a second to put the paint on.
Right.
What is slow is in trying to get the right color. In mixing color, sometimes I'll spend maybe half an hour trying to come up with a single color just for one brush stroke. This, again, is another Brittany landscape. It's very small, and the light is so clear there that the horizon becomes very, very sharp. So you have these wonderful silhouettes, and I try and form those again with single brush strokes. I think this is called Café de la Marine, which is a wonderful name for a cafe with a blue facade, bringing to mind ultramarine blue. And it's in the morning, the little waiter clearing off the tables. But again, I try to capture the gesture of the scene, not just of the figure, but I believe that everything has its own sort of gesture. This is a wet beach at low tide. Again, with the clouds moving over the landscape. And again, there is no repainting or retouching. It's trying to seize the moment. And there's great pleasure in that exercise. Again, the process is so enjoyable.
Right.
And it really doesn't matter if it comes out right or not, because, and sometimes you don't think it comes out right, it does come out.
Right.
You look at it back in the studio and you'll say, hey, this is not bad.
This is a beautiful painting, really.
Well, the remarkable thing, they've just started cultivating sunflowers, I guess, for the oil, and you didn't used to see them in Brittany, but now you have these wonderful fields of sunflowers growing right down to the beach, right, with the ocean in the background and these sunflowers. I had to call that picture homage to Vincent because it's reminiscent of Van Gogh.
Yes, that's true. And you are going to, now you're going into a series of paintings now, or different subject matter, or are they going to be similar?
Well, I'm still feeding off of the sketches that I did last summer in Brittany.
I see.
And preparing again to leave for the summer in a few months.
When you do sketches, do you sketch with pencil, or do you also sketch in color?
I sketch with oils. And actually, some of those paintings that we just saw were really glorified oil sketches.
I see.
With more information than a normal sketch would have.
Right.
I do pencil, pen and ink, watercolor, and in case I don't finish or get rained out, before I set up to paint, I try and take a few photographs to help me out later on. But I'm such a rotten photographer; they do more harm than good usually.
Yeah.
They never show what I want to show.
Yeah, that's rather interesting. Do you feel that your paintings are realistic, or call realism, or what would you call your paintings?
I would call it sort of a sloppy or brushy realism. I don't really believe there's any such thing as realism.
Yes.
As Courbet said, show me an angel and I'll paint one. How many paintings of angels are there? And this notion that because of photography there's no point in doing realism anymore is totally bogus, because artists have always created their own reality.
Yeah, that's right.
All the paintings of Madonna, what does the artist do? Have the Madonna and child come and pose for him?
That's true.
You know, who's ever seen a gold sky? It's all invention.
Right.
It's all fantasy.
Right, because when
the mindless recording of what is there, I really don't believe is a worthy enterprise for a creative artist. I think you have to put so much of yourself into it.
Now, you also have gotten into doing some very interesting murals, like this one here in the Rockville
that's based
City
on
Hall.
the Memorial Day parade in Rockville, which is the big event of the year for Rockville. But this is not realistic, because this particular parade that we see depicted never existed. This is a composite of hundreds of images and hundreds of figures from different times as the parade passed, all put together into one painting. So it's really not realistic. There's no realism to it at all.
Did you do a scale
These are real
drawing?
people, but they're not in the real parade.
Did you do a scale drawing before you did this?
Degas, excuse me, just might interrupt you 1 second. Degas said, paint falsely and add the accent of truth. And I try and follow that.
Right.
He said also that a work of art is committed with is done with as much deliberation as the commission of a crime.
All right.
So it looks real, but it isn't real.
I can think of some painters who were committing a crime, but I won't mention who they are. But just the subjects, because I've been there several times to look at this mural, and
they're all
really
real
come to
people.
life. Yeah, they really
but they
come
were
to
never
life.
in that particular grouping.
Right.
The way you start a project such as this a mural is a perfect example of the planned picture. There's nothing spontaneous about it. I mean, you can't just start at one end and hope it works out by the time you get to the other end.
Right, of course.
So it's based on a very, very careful preliminary drawing where all the shapes are sort of fit together to make a pattern, almost a tapestry-like pattern, and the pictorial dynamics, which is to say the movement, the composition, the theme, the meaning of the picture, the pattern of light and dark, the positions of the figures, their overlapping, are all worked out first in black and white, leaving you free to focus on color and paint handling. So the creative process subdivided into 2 steps. It's like writing a piece of music, and then performing it.
Right.
So the actual painting is a performance. And I use a mixed media on this so I can rub off the oil after the underpainting is dry.
Now look at this.
This is a souvenir from the commission I did for the Ringling Brothers Belli World Headquarters here in
Tyson's Corner, Virginia.
Yes. Yeah, this project took almost 2 years to complete, and it is, we believe, the largest painting of the 20th century, is certainly one of them, that's indoors. And
that's kind of an awkward space to work in, too, wasn't it?
Destined for a permanent. Well, I rented a warehouse, and it was very hard to find a space large enough, actually, for this. Even the warehouse ceiling wasn't high enough, and I carried it as far as I could in the warehouse. As a matter of fact, I did what's called an underpainting, all in monotone with no color. And then we unrolled those canvases, took them to the building, and they were glued to the wall. And then I came in and essentially colorized the monochrome underpainting. Colorization, I think, is an oversimplification. Actually, I painted it there. What you see is what was done there. You can't see what's underneath, but it went in steps.
What media did you use on
this? This is oils.
This is oils.
Oils on canvas, and it's glued to the wall in an old technique called mariflage. Lovely French word. Sounds like camouflage. It's mariflage. The elements in the painting are actual circus stars. In the beginning, the clients thought they would use. We talked about generic circus, but then they said, no, let's have our people in it, and so the circus stars past and present. Of course, there's so many people involved in the circus that it's impossible to do them all, so I had to pick and choose through it. The drawing for this took as long as it did to paint the picture. I spent 6 months on the drawing, and then the drawing tells me what it is I'm going to paint, because again, it's an invention. This what you see here never existed.
The drawing for something like this is called a cartoon, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. A cartoon is a drawing to the scale of the finished work whenever possible. However, this picture was so large that I did a drawing that was a fourth as large as the final picture. But again, you can see from here that realism, horses don't stand over doorways or don't fly through the air and are not in front of clowns and acrobats. It's all art is sort of a collage of ideas. Some are poetic, some are visual.
It's so intricate, what you've done here.
Well, the overlapping is a lot of fun, to have these things swirl and overlap. And the overlapping gives you a sense of activity and almost the tumult of the circus when the elements themselves are very static.
What do you think about the light in the space where the mural is? Are you pleased with the way that?
Well, they went to great pains to try and prepare the wall to receive this picture. And a commission like this is really a once-in-a-lifetime thing. It's the biggest thing that I've ever done, and
I'm sure.
I guess I doubt very much whether I'll ever do anything as large again.
So you were very happy to do this?
Yeah, it was quite a lot of fun. I went to the circus so often that my car smells like elephants. And when I would come home, my dog would run the other way. He would smell me and run the other way. And there were a lot of sort of side events that went with it. I got to meet Gunther Gabriel Williams, who you see here, who invited me to come in. He said, "Oh, it's all right, these tigers trust me. You can come into the cage. It'll be all right." I kept my distance. And I got to hear a lot of circus gossip, amusing circus gossip. And I was very excited to receive the commission, but when I got it, it really became almost a nightmare, because I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was working on it a year and a half, eating, drinking, sleeping, breathing circus. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night to see elephant wrinkles, because I felt like I was painting giant raisins after a while.
Well, that's pretty good. But
those are all elephant portraits, by the way. Gunther came and he said, "Oh, that is Susie, that's Wolfgang, there's Siegfried," and he recognized all his elephants. I didn't realize I was painting portraits. Next time someone asked me, "Do I do portraits?" I said, "Sure, I paint elephants all the time."
That's pretty good. Have you had much experience in painting animals prior to this bureau?
No, that's one of the nice things about commissions. You have an opportunity to paint things you normally wouldn't do.
I see.
I normally don't do animals, horses, elephants, etc., let alone lions and tigers. And the nice thing about a commission that it offers you to enlarge your scope of subject matter.
Right.
But I must say, when this was over, it was a great relief to go to quiet little Brittany and paint some nice little landscapes that I could actually pick up and carry around.
I see. So
with no thinking and no planning, this work was so developed and contrived.
So just about when you think that you've done everything there is to do at painting, you get something like this that you know you haven't done.
That's true, yeah. Well, that's one of the great things about it. The life, I think some of my students anyway feel that there comes a moment when you have arrived or you become successful, and there's really no such thing. It's the quality of your experience while you're doing the work and the life that you lead, the kind of life that you lead, and the continuing growing process should be in itself a work of art. That's what art for me is all about. It's to humanize not only my life but the lives of those who are able to enjoy my work.
It's terrific. You know, Bill, it's really been wonderful having you here with us today, and I'm sure that our viewers have really gotten a lot out of this program. And I do want to thank Bill Woodward for being with us today, and I hope the viewers will watch our program again when we will have another very gifted artist. Thank you very much. Okay.